Great. Well, welcome everyone. Appreciate everyone taking a few minutes out of their day for this developer meeting kicking off the city's winter housing trust fund round. So I'm going to introduce the panelists that are in the room from the city side, and then I'm going to kick it over to Rusty Mills to introduce the staff from LISC that are joining us today. Harold Thompson is one of our senior communications people. His email address is in the chat, so if you have any technical issues, please reach out to Harold and he's going to help us with that. And then we are going to do written Q&A at the end of the presentation. So there's a Q&A box in the screen, and you can submit those questions. You can also email your questions, because I see a lot of people have called in. You can email your questions to Harold's email address, and he will give us those questions when we get to the end of the presentation. So again, thank you for being here. And my name is Warren Wooten. I'm the Assistant Director for Affordable Housing for the city, and I'll be doing the presentation of the development funds from the city side in this presentation. I already introduced Harold Thompson, who is one of our senior communications people and is going to be helping us with communications and any kind of technical issues during the presentation. Pam Alexander is on the line. Pam Alexander is in our compliance group, and just wanted her to be on because we will have some discussions about federal funds today. If you have any questions around environmental or federal compliance, we have Pam on the line with us today. And of course, everyone knows Ms. Zelika Bierman, who is our Housing Trust Fund Manager. She's on to help with questions today. Lastly, but definitely not least, Sean Heath, who is our Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services, is online to assist with any questions that we might have today. Rusty, I'll kick it to you to introduce your team.
Okay, thanks, Warren. From the LISC side, we have Tiffany Durr, who's our director on our funds team, as well as I see Ralphine that's in and out. Ralphine Caldwell is executive director for our local LISC Charlotte office here, so she'll be joining us as well. And I think that's it from our side.
Great. Well, let's get started then. So our agenda today, we've just completed item 1, welcome and introductions. I'm going to run through the housing development side from the city in terms of our funding opportunity becoming available. Our RFP documents will all post on Friday on our website, and Zelika will send out a notification when that is posted and the link that you can get at all of the documents. And Rusty will be presenting from LISC's side. We'll go through the schedule, and then again, we'll be taking questions via email or chat during this webinar. We will also be taking questions for the first week that the RFP is open, and we will be posting all of the answers to those questions back onto the website so that everyone has the same information. So if you don't get your question answered today, don't worry about that. We're hopeful that lots of those questions will be answered by the RFP, and if not, you can send a question in through the 20th, and we'll have that scheduled for you. Let's keep going here. So many of you know that we operate following the city's adopted housing framework, which emphasizes creating new affordable housing, preserving existing affordable housing, and creating opportunities for family self-sufficiency here in the Queen City. So the Housing Development Fund, the Housing Trust Fund, as many of you know, was established in 2001. It is funded biannually through GO bonds that the voters approved. Since 2002, the city has made over $260 million of investments, which have resulted in over 12,000 units of affordable housing here in the city. Our funding is a flexible fund and can be applied to by both for-profit and nonprofit developers. We offer very flexible structuring, and there is the requirement that at least 20% of the units developed through the trust fund funding be targeted to households at 30% of AMI or below. The typical structure is a soft financing with a 20-year cash flow contingent loan with a minimum debt coverage of 1.15 and service payment that accrue through your cash flow contingent, and it's a subordinate debt to your primary debt stack. I'm not going to read through all of this. We're often asked, well, how do you evaluate the proposals? Well, we evaluate them from these categories. All of this goes into our review. We see how closely your proposal aligns with council priorities and policies. What is the specific strength of the development, and what is the strength of the developer? As funding gets tighter, how well your funding or your requested funding from the city leverages other funding that you're bringing to the table is becoming increasingly important. And then we look at the proposed site. On here, it says that you must convene at least 2 meetings. That's a change that you're going to see in the RFP. We've heard you, and we're going to take that down to 1 meeting if you're not already required to do a meeting for rezoning. So if you're bringing a site that's by right, you only need to hold 1 community meeting. If you're rezoning, then the rezoning meetings that you're already required to hold are sufficient for the HDF purposes. Here's the kind of the review process. The city and LISP will issue their RFPs, and then we will receive those notifications that you've received those. We will have a portal set up this time, so you will not be emailing any documents in. You will be posting your documents through a portal that we've established. We will then review your responses. The staff will review them, and we will put those summaries and make a recommendation to council. The council will have 2 opportunities to review your proposals, first in an action review meeting, and then at a final vote where they approve funding. None of that's changed from previous rounds. Once it's approved, then we'll have an investment review period, which will result in a commitment letter. We'll then go through loan closing with you, and then our final phase will be monitoring the construction of your development. Here's all of the information that you'll most likely find most interesting. As with the last round, a homeownership component has been included in this round in response to council's desire to see more homeownership opportunities in the city. As legal fees have gone up, we're asking the developers to absorb up to $25,000 in legal fees on the city's side so that we can continue to have a sustainable program. We're continuing with an asset management fee of $50 a unit per year. That will escalate at 3%. At least 10% of the 20% of the units targeted to 30% must be rented to voucher holders. We're continuing to have a short supply of units that we have lots of vouchers available for in Charlotte, and we need to find units to get those folks into. New this round, this last July, council passed source of income protections. We have a website set up now for source of income protections and showing you what you need to comply with. But any development that comes through the trust fund or really receives any city assistance in development now must comply with the source of income protection policy passed by city council. You must use the Acela planning software to submit your sketch plans. We'll have planning staff that can assist you with that. one of the new changes is that federal home and CDBG funds will also be available along with the CHO funds during this investment round. And you'll see a new question in your application that asks if you're able to accept federal funds as part or all of your request for funding through this RFP. We received some really good feedback from our home ownership developers. Our last RFP was not very conducive for those types of developments. So you'll see that we've made some changes in this RFP, a new checklist for document submittal that's much more closely aligned with homeownership projects than our regular checklist, and then a new workbook that will replace the rental pro forma for you to fill out. That gives us the information that we need to make decisions, but again, is much more conducive to your project. The funding commitments will also be quite a bit more firm than they have been in the past. This is because we need to move HDF funds out to projects as expeditiously as possible so that we don't have a lot of funding sitting on the city side. We want to move our HDF to projects quickly, so your ability to bring those projects to a shovel-ready state and close on your financing will be a big piece of our review as we move forward. And those commitment letters, those dates in those commitment letters will be much more firm than they've been in the past. We have 2 whole pages of what's new. This is probably the biggest change, and we are expecting questions on this, and so we will respond to those questions. We're going to institute for this round, and this is solely focused on multifamily new construction, a tiered approach. There will be 2 tiers of review for new construction multifamily projects. The first tier, to receive review in the first tier, your project must meet the tier 1 funding limits. You're going to ask me what those funding limits are. We're working on those, and you'll see those on Friday in the RFP submittal release. There will be a per unit limit and a per development limit. So to get into the first tier, your development request must be under those funding levels by unit and by development. Or you can agree to accept some or all of your award in federal funding. Does that mean that you'll necessarily get federal funding? No, it just means that you are able to accept federal funding if we need to switch out some or all of your requests with federal funds rather than all the bond funds coming through the trust fund. So the next one is that your project is eligible and that you apply for NCHFA RPP funding, or your development is in District 6 or 7. So this is an or list, not an and list. You need to meet one of these requirements to get into Tier 1 review. What's in Tier 2 review? All other requests. So if your request is above the funding requirements listed in the RFP, you can't take federal funds, you can't apply for RPP, or your development is not located in District 6 or 7, you can still apply. The review of your project will just come after that Tier 1 review. So we will run down the list with the funding that we have. If all of that funding is taken up by Tier 1 projects, then there will be no funding in Tier 2. If there's money left over, we'll move down into Tier 2. The next question that you have for me is going to be, well, how much money is going to be available? We don't have a set number. That really is determined by council, but the voters approved $50 million, and we have 4 funding rounds that we are required to fund with that funding. So just to give you an idea of how we're looking at it. And then finally, all NOAA, supportive housing, and single family developments, they will all be reviewed in their own separate categories. So here's the schedule. The RFP will be posted sometime tomorrow, and Zelica will send out another notification letting you all know that it's been posted. And we'll also probably put a good bit of information out through our social media just to make sure everybody has opportunity to access the funds. So you'll see all of that happen tomorrow. If there are questions and you have questions, we will be answering those questions up through the 20th. So take some time to review the RFP, and then please submit those questions. You can submit those questions to Zelica in writing, and then we will answer all of those questions in one document, and we will post it at the same location that the RFP is going to be located, and we will also notify you that those questions have been answered and are posted to the website. Your proposal deadline back to us is February 10th, but you have till March 17th to submit for your sketch plan review, and your market studies need to be in by March 13th. Your final planning support letter needs to be into us by April 5th, and we've tentatively scheduled the council's final review on this and approval for the April 24th council meeting. Again, all of these are subjects to change based on council schedule, but you will be notified if there is a change in this schedule. And that is the end of my piece of the presentation. Rusty, I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to you, and I will control slides for you. So just let me know when you're ready for your next slide.
Okay, thanks, Warren. And again, I have Tiffany Durr with me, and we're going to share in this presentation and in terms of moving through it. So hopefully we'll address most of the questions that folks may have. Next slide, Warren. That's just a disclaimer. You can move that, past that. Next slide, Warren. Just a little bit about LISC. Started in 1979, and the Charlotte office actually started in May of 2019. I'm assuming March of 2019. We're one of 38 offices around the country that hopefully will leverage a lot of the opportunities out in different cities. You can see some facts about LISC there with AA minus rated, the number of units that we've produced. Affordable housing is what we're known for primarily across the country. But as you can also see, we do a lot of other things on the economic development side. We have NFL football teams, fields that we do, healthy food projects, place-based initiatives. So as you can see, we're not just housing. We believe in a whole comprehensive approach to community development, which includes housing as well as all the other services and needs that an individual may have. Next slide, Warren. The local LISC Charlotte team, as I noted before, Ralphine Cotwell is our executive director. Ralphine is on the call. If you want to say hello, Ralphine.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, we started in March of 2019 with a team of two, Ralphine and I, and we quickly went into the first RFP. So glad to be at this point, 4 years removed from that, and have a much smoother process, as we will all see as we move through this particular round. And next slide, Warren. I'm going to turn it to Tiffany to kind of go through the National LISC Funds Management team and the staff that gives us great support. We're proud and lucky to have them all as they help us with a relationship team on the ground here. But then we have a national team that helps us through the other phases of development and underwriting and modeling and all those things. So Tiffany, if you would please.
Sure. Thanks, Rusty. Hello, good morning, everyone. As Rusty mentioned, LISC Strategic Investments, we're a national team. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of LISC and support many of the community development activities through LISC through our private investment funds. So we wanted to put this slide in here so that we could show the local team and the support you have there and the faces and people you know locally, as well as the folks behind the scene on the National LISC Fund Management team that support. George Ashton is the president and managing director of LISC Strategic Investments. I am a senior director who manages our investment team, which includes underwriting, originations, and closing. Ben Gillespie is one of the members on our team. Some of you may know him. He's working along Rusty to help structure the deals. And then Emily Harden is our director of credit and underwriting, who supports the underwriting of the deals that are considered for CHOI funding. We have a lot of other members, some of that you may interact with from a marketing side with Catherine Klostad. We have business development side. So the rest of our members are on our website. That's listed here below at liststrategicinvestments.org. Thank you. And next slide. This is a little bit about what we do at LISC Fund Management. We are a registered investment advisory arm of LISC. We do everything from designing investment funds through development, deployment, and management. Some of our funds are place-based, which we like to consider our Charlotte team, as well as other cities around the country that we support, where we work on local initiatives. And some of our funds are broader in scope with a national presence, and we can lend nationally to different initiatives. We're in this light blue, the third arrow, for deployment, which includes originations, underwriting approval, investment decisioning, and then marketing for our funds. So that's the team that I represent and how we support Ralphine and Rusty with this initiative. Next slide, please. So Rusty, I'll kick it back to you. I know we do a little bit of back and forth here, and I'll go over the products once we get to that.
Thanks, Tiffany. As you mentioned, the CHOIF is a private investment fund to address the issues that arose with the 50 out of 50 study years ago. We brought it to market in 2019 with funds that were raised by the private sector to raise a total of 50, of which 43 was actually raised towards the housing fund. We get those dollars out through debt and equity, and we'll go into those products in a second here. But it's really been a tool that the market called for, and the market has responded to with using it with the intent as was presented. So thank you for all the developers who are on the line for your help in making this a successful first run, and looking forward to doing more. Next slide, Warren. This is a little bit about the CHOIF. As I mentioned, 53 million was totally committed. Of that, 43 was actually raised towards units that we've done. You can see some information here about how that was. It was fully allocated within 2 years. And you can see that the AMI targets are similar. We've actually hit 25% of our units are at the 30% AMI level, and we've just done about 1,400 units or so, with a few more to actually close on that particular first round of 43 million actually that we had available to use. So looking forward to moving forward again with that. Next slide. This gets into the deals and the impacts and metrics. As you can see, capital deployment, in terms of the number of deals that we've closed. We talked about the affordability measures of 30% AMI units, and 20% of those have to be at 30% AMI. We look at the proximity of jobs, the actual community stability. We look at leverage as well, similar to what the city's metrics are. So we definitely do a customized underwriting, if you will. No deals are exactly the same, so we take that into accountability, but we do use these 4 or 5 factors that we have listed here in terms of what guides us in our decisioning to make sure we get to the best deals possible and those that have the greatest impact. So that's a little bit on our goals and metrics right there. Next slide, Warren. I'll kick it back to Tiffany for a little bit on our products in terms of the debt and equity that we have to offer.
Sure, thanks, Rusty. So CHOIF has essentially 2 products, debt and equity. Most of our deployment has been on the debt side. That is both senior and subordinate. With our LIHTC projects as well as NOAA projects that we funded, we've mostly been in a subordinate position. And so similar to the city, we've refined our process, refined our products a little bit more so that we can provide clarity to the development community on how we want to deploy CHOIF. We have a $3 million max per project. We're going to hold firm there for $3 million, a maximum all-in LTV of 95%, including all of the senior debt. 3.75% rate that is hard pay. This is not cash flow contingent. And an amortization period. This is a little different from prior years. We do have built-in amortization of 35 years after the interest-only period. So just adding clarity there, up to 18 years term. And then we have an all-in 110 stabilized amortizing debt cover. It's a little below what the city has, so we'll use the greater of. So the city has 1.15 I saw in the prior presentation. So we want to make sure all forms of debt are compliant with the debt cover minimum. If you're only using CHOIF, then it's a 110. We have full recourse to the borrower and sponsor until stabilization, and we have certain conversion requirements to have that burn off of recourse. For equity, we just want to point out it can be preferred or common, $3 million max as well, 5% IRR, and the minimum equity requirements, whether it's preferred or common, that are listed here. And we'll have more details in RFP for those specific products. Next slide, please. Our underwriting guidelines here, vacancy exit analysis. We do a reversion analysis at 70% LTV and a 6% cap rate. Developer fee, the NOI spread, as long as there's a 1% spread between income and expenses on a pro forma basis, that's great. That's what we'll be looking for. 5% management fee based on NRI. Contingency requirements there and affordability requirements as well. None of these are significantly different from prior years. Next slide, please. We have the RFP process in here. I think I'm supposed to kick it back to you, Rusty, but I think this was also covered in the prior presentation, just about when the RFP will be issued and that process for city approval. Our process will closely align to the city's process. We'll be reviewing separately. Which brings me to the next slide. So maybe we can jump right into that. So a few important notes that we want to emphasize here. CHOIF is a separate private investment fund from the Housing Trust Fund. We work in conjunction with the city to leverage those funds. But the key distinction here is it's must pay and hard debt. It's not soft money. It's not cash flow contingent, even though we are doing a joint RFP. We review the deals independently based on those factors that Rusty highlighted there. We have a matrix for how we review our deals. As far as timing, after initial review and we decide to move forward on a deal, we can provide a support letter, but similarly, we've put on commitment expiration. So when we have an application letter for LIHTC projects, that's fine, but a full letter of intent with the full terms detailing out how CHOIF will structure its debt, that will be issued after tax credits committed and it'll be time constrained. This is so we can best deploy our funds. The LOIs are issued after we do a full underwriting and presentation to our initial intake committee, which is separate from our investment committee. Intake is a group of members within the LISC team that reviews the deal and has comfort with the terms of the deal. And we also have legal review of our LOI. At that point, we will issue a letter of intent that's signed, countersigned, and time constrained. Prior to that, as I mentioned, we can issue a support letter that's softer, shorter, so that can be submitted with tax credit packages. And as mentioned, we will echo here that our LOIs are subject to funding availability within CHOIF. That's written in all of our LOIs and is nothing new, but something that we wanted to emphasize here. And Rusty, I'll kick it back to you for our final slide.
Okay. Thanks, Tiffany. Next slide. Again, we welcome any comments and input, as Warren has said at the top of the meeting, that, we'll take into consideration any questions in the chat as well as any emails that come in. But definitely look forward to working this next round and meeting developers who I haven't met, if there are any. And again, I'm the local point of contact for the CHOF. I'm the person that actually coordinates the local on the ground efforts and work with Tiffany's team to help hopefully get these deals into the right queue. So please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any comments or thoughts. My contact information is at the bottom or at the end of this presentation, I think, for all of us. So again, thank you for your time and look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate everyone being on the call today. I haven't seen any questions come in through chat. Harold, have you received any questions?
No, we have not.
That's fine. And it looks like a lot of people are called in, so it's probably difficult for you to send the questions in. So I'm going to put up this next slide. This is all of our contact information. So questions that you have that you would like answered, please send either Zelica or myself. We will compile those questions. If you have questions for LISC, you can send those to Rusty. Just make sure you copy me and Zelica on this question so that we can ensure that we get an answer onto the answer document before it's released and we don't miss a question. We want to make sure that you all get the information that you need, and we do that in a really timely way. So go ahead and take a snapshot of this, get our information. And again, this presentation will be posted tomorrow along with all of the documentation. And so I'm going to stop right here and just ask Sean if he has any final comments. And if not, we will go ahead and end the webinar.
I'll keep it brief, Warren. I'd just like to thank the team, including our LISC partners, for your work getting prepped for the RFP and for all of our development partners on the call today. Thanks for your continuing efforts. I know these have been extraordinary times and challenging times for affordable housing development, but we're thrilled that voters stepped forward once again and endorsed the housing bonds, and we're ready to put the money to good work. So thanks for your time today.
Great.
I just wanted to say something,
Zelica.
Warren.
Sure.
Thank you for everyone for joining in via the telephone. I think we had probably a problem with the WebEx, and I got a lot of text and calls, but like Warren said, you will be able to listen to the presentation and get all the presentation online tomorrow.
Great. Thank you all. This concludes this webinar, and we look forward to your questions and working with you through this RFP round. Take care.